And just recently, he said he wanted to eliminate the enforcement of all misdemeanors. He quotes Marx freely, and I don't mean Groucho, with lines like seizing the means of production and each according to their need. We know how that ends, with empty shelves and broken economies from Cuba to the Soviet Union. A recent attempt at government-run groceries in Kansas City collapsed after just a few years. Shelves bare, shoplifting rampant, prosecutors looking the other way. That's Mendami's vision, and paired with Alvin Bragg in Manhattan, gee, what could possibly go wrong? But beyond his radical ideas, remember this: Mandami is 33 years old and has never worked outside of politics. Yet he wants New Yorkers to hand him control of a $110 billion budget. I wonder if he even knows how to balance his checkbook. In my opinion, probably everybody in this audience is more qualified to run the city than he. We've already seen what failed leadership looks like. Cuomo gave us no cash bail, sexual harassment scandals, a disastrous COVID nursing home policy, and initially promoted congestion pricing. Mayor Adams has presided over corruption and decline. In contrast, Curtis Sliwa has spent 50 years fighting for this city, shedding blood, sweat, and tears, and he has 5 bullet holes in him to show for it. No one knows our streets better, and because Curtis has never been a politician, he owes nothing to anyone but the people of New York. It's my honor that he is here tonight, to a man dedicated his life to protecting New Yorkers and who I hope will be our next mayor. I just want to call up for 2 minutes an old friend of his, Rob Speranza, who will introduce him. Rob?
Sorry, everybody. I don't have a first speech, but I just wanted to say, growing up as a kid, I saw Curtis Sliwa on TV shows and everything, going out and selflessly protecting the people in New York. And I knew I wanted to be that way when I got older. Became a cop myself. And over the years, I got to know him pretty well. And this man is tirelessly and effortlessly going out every day, keeping New York safe. And never stopped, before politics even, never stopped. He truly cares. Now faced with what we have, the threat to the police officers, the threat to the citizens, and stopping crime, he's the man to do it. Right now, if we get Mandami in, we're screwed. Basically, simple in top terms, we're screwed. We cannot have this happen. And I'm proud, so when they reach out to me to ask him if he can come, Curtis rarely ever says no. I don't even know him to say no when people ask him to speak. And he came, and he wanted to reach out to you. And I'm proud to be able to get him here, and I'm glad we're here. So guys, enjoy the speech, and have fun.
Thank you. There are a lot of people running for mayor this time, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about all of them. What I'm going to do is prove to you that there's one true New Yorker running, and that's Curtis Sliwa. First off, I want to thank the invitation here to North Towers. I had an invitation a while back, you know her well. She's the Queens District Attorney Melinda Katz, Democrat and the mother of my 2 youngest sons, Carter and Hunter. And she loved to play golf. And she said, oh, you got to come play golf here. Because we go over to Forest Park, play golf there. Also the hitting range at Alley Pond Park, which is right on Northern Boulevard. I actually saved a Democrat who I will not mention his name. He was part of the Joe Crowley confab years ago, who was half in the bag going from Little Neck, Douglaston to Bayside. He fell into the weeds, almost drowned. I said to Melinda and my 2 sons, I think there's a person in distress there, as I was ready to tee off. I was hitting them really good, 250 yards. I mean, it was my best day. And I pulled this guy out, and he could barely see straight. And Melinda said, I know that guy. She mentioned his name. I'm not going to mention his name. I said, well, from now on, maybe you might want to take a cab from Little Neck Douglas to the Bayside when you're having the bag. So I've had experiences with Democrats. I've had experiences with Republicans. I've had experiences with communists, and I've had experience with socialists. And I don't fear any of them. As a young boy, in fact, I was there today up in Crown Heights after those shootings that took place during the West Indian Day Parade. I was right outside of the Catholic school that I had gone to, 1st to 4th grade, St. Matthew's on Eastern Parkway in Lincoln Place off Utica Avenue. And I was reminiscing how as a young boy I remember being brought by some of the Jews who lived on Lincoln Place to Dubrow's. Any of you remember Dubrow's cafeteria? You remember? Oh boy, was it loaded with socialists. I had to have my split pea soup with my Jewish rye bread. And oh, was I getting a cauliflower ear full of socialist dogma. But I didn't shrink, I didn't die, I didn't blow away. As I saw when I visited Israel, I've been to Israel 3 times. I've gone from the Golan Heights down to Eilat. Eilat is my favorite location. Right there in the Red Sea. I went across to Jordan to Aqaba, where I saw Tony Blair. He had a home there at that time after he was prime minister. And Sharm el-Sheikh on the Egyptian side. And you could see Saudi Arabia in the distance. And I just loved Eilat. But I got to stop in the Negev Desert, not far from the chocolate factory, which the Israelis describe as their nuclear capability, 80 bombs ready to go off against any of their neighbors if they're threatened. And I was in the very simple home of Ben Gurion, the founder of the State of Israel, who was a socialist, as was Rabin when he was unfortunately executed. Biggest complaint I ever got in Israel were 2. Between the secular and the religious, at the time, the Shinui party, which was the secular, the Shah party, which is the religious. And the men and women trying to do business or even send packages. Hey, this socialism is crushing. I got to fill out pounds of paperwork. I can't get packages in. I can't send packages. I can't do business here. Obviously, Israel has changed to a great degree. But I've experienced the socialism. I've experienced communism. I visited Havana. I saw how there were 2 ways of life. For the locals, they had to live on a ration book. For the tourists, they got everything that we're used to getting here in America. And yet, the people were imprisoned, barely able to function. And I remember early meetings that I went to when I was in high school. I saw Gus Hall speak, who was the leader of the American Communist Party, who had a dacha in Yonkers where he grew his tomato plants. And then we found out years later that he was being funded by Nikita Khrushchev in the Soviet Union out of Moscow. So you learn a lot from experiences, but you don't necessarily fear it. We've seen Zoran Mandami before. If you're old enough as I am, I'm the oldest one running for mayor, I'm 71. We've had socialist city council people. We've had communist city council people. We had Mark Antonio, who was from East Harlem, who my grandfather, Fidel Bianchino, told me, oh, he's a socialist communist. You know, he goes to Washington, D.C. Fiorello LaGuardia, who is a hero in our household, he was partially a socialist. He ran on the American Labor Party in addition to being a very liberal Republican who could speak Yiddish and Italian, and that guaranteed him victory. So we need to be students of history. We had a socialist. His name was Comrade Bill de Blasio, the part-time mayor, the dope from Park Slope with his grifter life, Charlotte. Where did they go for their honeymoon? They went to Havana. Who did they support? The Sandinistas of Daniel Ortega. Look at Bernie the Altacaca Sanders, who grew up near Brighton Beach, went to Madison High School with Chuck Schumer, right? Although he preceded Chuck Schumer. But Bernie the Altacaca Sanders celebrated his wedding outside of Moscow. Hey, these are true ideologues. These are true devotees. But I'm not afraid of them, because I don't think those are the defining issues. When you call Zoran Mandami an anti-Semite, he checks the box twice. And notice in the Democratic Party, primary, it didn't matter. He still won overwhelmingly. Because every day you talk about somebody should drop out is a great day for Zoran Mandami. Every day Zoran Mandami attacks Donald Trump, our president, it's a great day for Zoran Mandami. Because he has to avoid the issues that are critical to most people who, quite frankly, don't know the difference between a communist, socialist, and capitalist. Let's get real here. Many of you do because you grew up in that area. You think the millennials and Gen Zers, who, by the way, are the majority of the population, now I hate to bust your bubble, but they're the majority of the population, and they are the majority of the voters. Do you think if you did a quiz with them and asked them to explain the difference between a communist, a socialist, and a capitalist, do you think they could answer that? And you know why? I know, I have 3 sons who've gone to the public school systems in Queens and went to some of the best ones. My youngest son, Hunter, was just accepted into Townsend, a great high school, considered one of the best high schools. But they're not taught history. They're not taught current events. I said to Hunter, they teach you current events in school. No, Daddy. Why? They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We're spending $42,000 a pupil now. We're not teaching them history, just peripherally. We're not teaching them current events. We're not teaching them geography. And the worst thing, we don't teach them civics. I grew up with civics. I went to PS 114 every Friday, civics class. The importance of government. Who does what? Who is the Kings County DA? Who's the borough president? What's the job of the city council people? How did judges get into position? I'm learning this from Alan Topol, my 5th grade teacher at PS 114. And then we'd have assemblies, many assemblies, every Friday afternoon. And they'd invite in members of the American Legion, Jewish war veterans, or veterans of foreign war and their auxiliaries. And they would explain to us how at one time in that auditorium at PS 114, they sat in that seat. They went to the same classroom we did. They told of their life. They told of their service to the country, their losses. And we learned so much. And then on Flag Day, you ask people about Flag Day now, they wave every other flag in the world, but not the American flag. I remember on Flag Day, am I correct, June 14th? Hopefully I'm right, because I know there's some former teachers here who will give me a demerit for that, make me stay after school and clap the erasers. We would have an assembly, they would tell us the reason that we are all joined at the hip, no matter who you are, Democrat, Republican, or independent, just an American, that American flag unites us all. And we would march through the neighborhood, remember? And we would see flags festooned everywhere. It didn't determine if you were a Democrat or a Republican. Now it seems like, oh my God, if you wave an American flag, it means you've taken a political position. No. In this country, you have the right to burn an American flag. You have the right to burn an American flag, according to the United States Supreme Court. And then imagine me, the shock of all shocks. I go to an American Legion meeting. They have a box in the back. It said, damaged flags. And so people would bring their flags to the American Legion Hall while some of the guys were bending their elbows, because I know why they were there, at the gin mill there, the bar. And I asked as a little kid, curious as we are, what happens to those flags? Oh, they get burned. I'm like, what? You burn the American flag? That's the only way you can get rid of an old American flag. Remember, the American flag is in our heart, minds, and soul. It what brings us together. It does not divide us or separate us. It is the beauty that when this flag is flown all over the world, there are people desperate to get here by any means necessary. While we have people who are ungrateful for being Americans, and they seem like they'd rather be in other places. As my grandfather on my Polish side, Anton in Chicago, told me, I said, Grandpa, how come you don't fly any Polish flags around here? Hey, you want a Polish flag? Go to Poland. I'm sure there's 10 Poles who would like to come here and replace you. Same thing in the Italian household that I grew up in Canarsie, Brooklyn, and East New York. There were no Italian flags. My grandfather, my grandmother, Fidel and Nicoletta Bianchino said one flag, an American flag. That's why we came to this country. And we don't institute that at all. I'll give you some of the other programs that I would put back into effect that benefited us all, no matter where you came from or no matter who you were. We had a PS-114 after school. Right after school, you could be there at the after school center, sports, arts and crafts, theater, music, singing. Remember orchestra? If you were in the orchestra in a high school or junior high school, they let you take the band instruments home and practice. You remember that? How many of you were in the band, right? They don't do that anymore. There's no cultural classes. There's no... Look, I was a jock. I played sports. But that was a minuscule number of people in the school. Most of the young people wanted to get up, be in theater, be in musicals, sing, be in plays, chorus group, band, orchestra. And why is it always the genius kid got to play the oboe? Right? I always said, why is Sharon here playing the oboe? Oh, she's a genius. I mean, do you have to be a genius to play the oboe? This used to be the vitality that existed in our public school system. And after school, you'd go home after your 3 to 5 session, and if you wanted to come back for night center, you had night center that was on from 7 to 9. And it kept a lot of children out of harm's way and off the streets. And then I remember further upstairs, there were classes for immigrants to learn English. And I asked my grandparents, is that true when you came to this country? How did you first learn to assimilate and learn English? Oh, the local public school. You'd go there at night. They teach you English. If you didn't understand English or you couldn't understand or read or write, or you didn't have a relative who could, you were lost in this country. You had to learn English. And now computer competency is based on English. So why are we not teaching our kids proper English, right? The world wants to know English, but we do not have children who can read at 4th grade level. 2/3 of them can't read English, can't write, can't do arithmetic. And we're spending $42,000 a pupil? And teachers are still reaching into their pockets to pay for basic supplies in the classroom? And a bureaucracy of deputy chancellors who nobody knows, and department heads who nobody sees, because it's the principals who hire the staff now. And I've had many conversations with them, especially the deans who have been handcuffed. They can't do anything. You know, it used to be if the dean came for you in the class, you were in trouble. Dean took you downstairs. Who did he call first? Your mother or your father? And I would say to the dean, can we resolve this without calling my mother or father? Can I negotiate some kind of a settlement to be a better boy at Bildersee Junior High School? And the dean was like, nope, you crossed the line. It's going to be a price to pay. And when kids would act up and mess around with the teachers in the classroom, they didn't have to go to their shop steward at the UFT at that time. Trying to remember who was the UFT chairman. Oh boy, did he have an awakening. It'll come to me momentarily. But you went to the gym teachers. And then the gym, that's right, Albert Schenker. Oh, I remember, Ocean Hill, Brownsville. I was right in the middle of it. I'll tell you a story momentarily. So anyway, they'd go to the gym teachers, and then the gym teacher would say to you, hey, come here. You'd be, no, you, Sliwa, come here. Climb the rope. Now, none of us could climb the rope. You could have been rough and tough. A little skinny Bellini would go up and down the rope, up and down the rope. Meantime, the real tough guys couldn't go up the rope. It was embarrassing. That's how they kept order within a school. Now they have a situation where if, let's say, a child is a problem for other children or for a teacher, they decide, don't call the police. No superintendent suspension, no expulsion. We are going to resolve this in a room. Now, you, the teacher, you just got hit in the head with a stick. Don't worry about it. He's going to apologize to you. And naturally, he knows the routine. Mrs. McGillicuddy, I'm sorry what I did to you. I had a bad day in the house. I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. Okay, is everything settled? Yep. Then he walks out the room and he goes to Mrs. McGillicuddy. I'll get you. Snitches get stitches and end up in ditches. The poor teacher cannot function, cannot teach. The union has abandoned them. The school system has abandoned them. Remember, there would be parent-teachers night, I remember. Jungle Jenny Wilson in the 6th grade. There were more parents and relatives, aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews lined up to be there. And yet I've been in inner city schools where sometimes nobody shows up for the children. Not an older brother or sister, nobody. Imagine what that child feels like. Knowing that some other children had somebody show on behalf of them. Imagine nobody shows up for you. What are you going to think of yourself? You're going to think you're worthless. You're going to think that maybe what you were told, that you'll never amount to anything, you'll just be in jail, just like your father, and all these negative stereotypes that get built into your brain, and you find out that nobody went to parent-teachers night to speak on your behalf to see how you were doing. You think you're going to be an angry kid? You think that all of a sudden you're going to seek maybe solidarity with a gang that embraces you but gets you to do the worst possible things to other people? You know what the answer is. Education is the big equalizer. That's what levels the playing field. Your families may have come here and they couldn't speak or write or communicate, but many of them decided education would be here for my children and grandchildren. And it was through the public school system. When I went to Catholic schools in the 60s and public schools were the elite schools. I'm talking about an average school because you had advanced classes, you had mezze, poco classes, and then you had where all my supreme cuisine cousins were, 4F, 5F. You know, they call that special ed now. We had the 800 schools. Do you ever remember the 800 school? Oh my God. There were all different levels though. But the public school system produced some of the brightest, best behaved people, best educated, and best dependent people to choose the right pathway. Because typically, when you're no longer at home, when you no longer have the guidance of parents or guardians or whoever else is a positive influence, you're on that road. There's a fork in the road. You got to make a good choice or a bad choice. I deal with all the kids that make bad choices. I've known how to deal with them. I've recruited them into the Guardian Angels for 47 years. I've turned them into productive human beings in a society that they never thought that they could be a part of. I know it can be done because it has been done. And long before the Guardian Angels, there are so many programs out there where people get no recognition, no attention for everything they do with our most precious resource, the children. And I don't see that being prioritized. It hasn't been prioritized in a long, long time. I benefited from that. I'm going to make sure that we bring it back when I'm the mayor of the city of New York. If we can't protect teachers in the classroom, what are we going to expect them to be able to do as kids go to sleep, act up, create problems for other kids? There was a moment in my history, I had been kicked out of Brooklyn Prep, which was a very prestigious high school, Jesuit high school, which is now Medgar Evers in Crown Heights on Nostrand, President, and Sterling. I was the student government president. We were objecting to the wearing of jackets and ties. Can you imagine that? I'm wearing jacket and tie now running from there. I was the leader. The Jesuits taught us there are consequences for your actions. When they found out I was behind it, they showed me the door. They kicked me to the curbside and told me, don't look back. And I went out there and they transferred my records to Canarsie High School and they said, well, you got to get your Regents credits. I went to Canarsie High School, which is a relatively good high school, but not at the level of the Jesuit prep school. So All I had to do was sit there for 2 months. That's it. Sit there for 2 months, get my Regents credits. I was on my way to Brown University. And you know what happened? I'm in the middle of a history class. I'll never forget it. This kid gets up and starts cracking jokes, distracting the class, which was about a third black, a third Italian, a third Jewish. And they start fighting one another, and the teacher lost control. And I picked my books up. I walked home. My mother was a dental technician. My father, a merchant seaman for 50 years. I put my books on the table. And my mother said, "You're not feeling good, Curtis?" I said, "No, I'm not going back to school." What's up? What? You're not going back? No, that's it, Mom. I'm going to have to call your father. Ship to shore radio. You know what a ship to shore radio is? Then you got to wait a little bit of time. Then I heard my father. My father was very cool, calm, and collected from Chicago, blue-collar working class. He said, "Oh, son, you made a decision, huh? Not to go back to school." Well, now you got 3 decisions to make. You can pack your bags and leave and see what the real world is like. Or you could go back to school, get your Regent credits, go on to Brown University. Or you go out and get a job and you got to pay $70 a week room and board. This is in 1972. I had no negotiable skills whatsoever. But you know me, I'm a Weisenheimer. I'm not going back to school. And I'm not dumb enough to go out and leave this house where an Italian mother is taking care of her son. The son is like the prince. He can do no wrong. That's why you see Italian guys, they're 45 years old. They never left their mother's home. They can never find a woman who can equal mom. So I run across Rocky at Rockaway Parkway, Seaview Avenue, the Shell station. The guy just did 7 years for counterfeiting. Came out of a federal prison in Pennsylvania. Big sign said, "Night manager wanted." It had cobwebs on it. I said, "Hey, Rocky, I'm your night manager." He goes, "Hey, you, what do you know about a gas station?" "I know plenty." And I kept it at that. It was like, you know, your Fifth Amendment, keep your speech short, sweet, to the point. He goes, "All right. Now, you know, we have holdups here. You know, they put a gun right to your head. They want money, and you got to drop it into the drop box at night. And your biggest problem is going to be when they come out of the gin mills, the bars, at like 2, 3, or 4, and they close them. And now they got to get their Marlboro Reds. They got to get their L&Ms, their Lucky Strikes, Don't Strike Back. They're going to come to the machine. They're going to come to the cigarette machine, and they're going to put coins in, and it never works. And now they're going to want to kill you." And I saw guys pull out blackjacks and truncheons, beat that machine, kick it, throw it down on the ground. And then they look at me and say, "Yeah, what are you going to do about it?" "I'm not doing anything about it." And then remember, you had a trust factor. You would pump the gas, and then you expected them to pay you for it. The moment I pump the gas and I pull it out, you know, they'd have $1.35 of high test, you know, in a muscle car. They had to collect nickels, dimes, and pennies. And then they bolt out. The next day, Rocky would come in, and Rocky would say, "Well, that's deducted from your pay." My first week, I ended up owing him $15 after working 7 nights. So I figured that out straight up. Nobody was going to rob me. Nobody was going to take me off, because that's what you call street smarts. You either survive and you learn skills that are going to get you where you need to be, or you decide to go on a different path. And the path that I've taken is a path that a lot of blue-collar working class people have taken. I remember walking into my household on election day, and my father would dress up in his suit and tie as if they were going to church. My mother would be in a floral dress. My grandparents, they'd be all dressed up. My grandfather, Fidel Bianchino, who couldn't read, couldn't write, barely could speak English, went for a citizenship test with his 5 sons. And before the federal judge, this was during the Depression, he was asked 10 questions. He had no idea what the questions were. All he answered was Roosevelt, 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 Roosevelt. The judge looked at his sons. My uncle said, "He's going to be a great American. Hey, you're a citizen. We're going to give you the oath." That's the way a lot of life is. It's not the way it was written about. And my grandparents cherished being blue-collar working class, and they were Democrats, staunch Democrats. As my father would say, "Curtis, The Democrats, it's the party of the blue-collar working class. The Republicans are the party of the privileged, the rich, and the country club elite. And that's what I believed growing up. In 1972, I had my first vote, George McGovern, the peace candidate against Richard Nixon. And then I saw him get crushed. And I joined 1 million strong to go to Washington, D.C. for his inauguration as part of the anti-war movement. Boy, I learned a lot at a young age because my parents allowed me to have those experiences. I had a great public school education, a great parochial school education, and I was able to experience life and learn. There are consequences for your actions. And then eventually, after being an independent for many, many years, and then eventually the New York State Reform Party chairman, which I actually enjoyed because I dealt with Democrats and Republicans and independents equally, Andrew Cuomo decided to eliminate all third parties because how dare Cynthia Nixon of Sex and the City was going to challenge him for the governorship. Madonna mine, it's just Cynthia Nixon. We're not talking Bella Abzug here. What are you terrified of? Oh, he wiped out all the third parties. So I eventually became a Republican, and as everybody here knows, oftentimes I get called a rhino, Republican in name only. I've had a good relationship with President Trump over the years, and I've had a bad relationship. But I will tell you about this particular election for the mayoralty of the city of New York. The president has far more serious issues to deal with in this world. Peace between Russia and Ukraine, which is of dire need. Hundreds of thousands of people are being slaughtered. Europe is on the edge. Peace in the Gaza between Israel and Hamas. That's what Zoran Mandami has exploited amongst the millennials and Gen Zers, even amongst millennial Jewish children and grandchildren. He's exploited that. So when I've been asked publicly, I say, no disrespect to Donald Trump, but he's not necessarily the most popular guy in New York City. You're not going to go very far with Donald Trump's support, but more importantly, he's the president of the United States. There are more important things to do. He's the leader of the free world. Let us settle our differences. I believe in the people. I don't trust politicians. I don't trust Democrats. I don't trust Republicans because they have one interest, self-interest. I was brought up with the people. I trust the people to make the decision, and then if they make the wrong decision like they did with Comrade Bill de Blasio, we all suffer. We all suffer. And this is the dilemma that everybody faces now. What are we to do? Are we to stand and fight for what we know is right? Or are we going to allow a party label to determine who should become the next mayor of the city of New York? We've done that before. Let me give you a different time. How many of you were around when John Lindsay first ran for office as the silk stocking congressman, remember? Against my family's favorite, Mario Procaccino, the Italian whose father was a shoemaker who coined the phrase limousine liberal when he was describing John Lindsay. And then it was John Markey who eventually took the Republican nomination from Lindsay the second time. And Lindsay rode to victory on the Liberal Party line of David Dubinsky and Alex Rose. Do anybody remember that? Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Do you know how many people voted? 80% of the registered voters voted in 1965. 81% in 1969. I'm going to give you those figures again. 80% of the registered voters voted in 1965. 81% in 1969. In the last mayoral election, 2021, it was just me and Eric Adams. Did I not warn you he would be a crook, corrupt, and we would have chaos? Did I not warn you? But many of you did not listen. And as a result, we have collectively suffered. Because nobody would have known who Zoran Mandami was, not even his neighbors, if Eric Adams had been a halfway decent Democratic mayor. He would have been the incumbent. It would have been round two, would have made it very difficult for a Republican like me to run against him, but I would have run against him because I would have warned you. I told you about Eric Adams, and it would have been a two-person race. He failed us. He found that he should be in jail with his friend Bobby Menendez, who basically was allowing foreign money. This is the danger to America now. I'm warning Republicans and Democrats. The influence of foreign money. Foreign countries know you don't have to bomb America. You don't have to have more battleships. You don't have to take down our grid. You don't have to cyber attack us. You just got to bribe our officials. And oh boy, the Red Chinese have perfected that because they've bribed Democrats and Republicans. But there are other countries. Bobby Menendez took money from Egypt and Qatar. Eric Adams took money from Erdogan in Turkey, who hates Israel and hates Jews, although one time he used to actually vacation with them in the Mediterranean in Turkey when he loved Jews. You never know as circumstances change. But I am telling you, we are the product of a school system that does not promote civics, does not teach a new generation about government, that in the last election cycle, only 23% of registered voters even bothered to vote. How do you go from 80, 81% in 65 and 69 to 23%? First off, Republicans were still the minority party then. The Democrats were the majority party. But an entire generation had been taught, you go and you vote. People have died in battle to preserve your right to vote. We were taught this. We had Pearl Harbor Day. We were told, remember the Pearl. My father would tell me he was a merchant seaman for 50 years. This was ingrained in you. This was ingrained in you all the time. Patriotism, pride, and I'm not talking about false patriotism. I'm talking about where we learned about all the good and we learned about the bad also. Bringing me back to Ocean Hill, Brownsville, and Alberchenko. So now there's forced busing. All the Jews who had escaped Brownsville, they were now being told that their children and grandchildren would be bused back there, and they were saying, oh, no, we won't. All the Italians who had escaped East New York and came into Canarsie, and they were being told, your children and grandchildren are going to be bused back into East New York. And they said, oh, no, we won't. We could have left. We could have left to Miami. Remember when Jackie Gleason and Art Carney and the June Taylor dancers were saying, come on down to Miami Beach. Oh, boy, half my family went there. They settled in Hollandale because they were going to the track at Gulfstream. I saw you wear that Gulfstream shirt because they love going and betting on the ponies and going to North Miami Beach and Wolfie's where I went for 99 cents. You know, you get a nice cup of coffee, you get pancakes, eggs. It was the place where everybody wanted to go. And boy, they left in droves. And then in the 70s, when the Bronx was burning, 1 million people left New York City because of the growing crime problem and gang problem. So we've been through these cycles. And I've lived through these cycles. And I've learned from it. And now we're starting to return. We were quite prosperous. We were doing well. We always were proud of being the greatest city in the world. The capital of capitalism. And yet only 23% of the people vote. Now, who do we fault for that? Do we fault the people? Do they understand the importance of the vote? Were they ever taught that at home? Were they taught that in school? Were they taught that anywhere? Why did 80% and 81% show up in 65 and 69? Because that was a generation where it was ingrained in you. And most were Democrats. So I know it has been done previously. There was more pride in the country. There was more patriotic pride in what our flag stood for. The basics, that's what I'm going to represent. I am a product like you are the basics. We know what it makes to become a great American. Not being a Democrat or a Republican, but being somebody who understands your purpose in this great country of ours, the purpose of government, why we have judges, why we have elected officials, appointed officials, what they do, and the importance of the vote that would get men and women to stand online. One day, November 4th, there was no other way of voting. And yet the lines would be out the door. If machines weren't working, they'd stay 6, 7, 8 hours. It could be pouring rain. And they would say to us, Wanyang, We do this because men died in order for us to be able to make these choices. You think they teach that to children any longer? No. So understand this. Rather than get into every complication of every major issue that's plaguing our city and our state and our country, I'm going to stay focused on what helped us. It worked for us. It can work for our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and future generations. Don't be afraid of the millennials and Gen Zers. That was exactly what our parents and grandparents were afraid when we grew up in the 60s. How many of you grew up in the 60s, remember? Don't trust anybody over 30. Counterculture. Peace, love, and happiness. Here, smoke ragweed. Man, the ragweed back then compared to what you buy now, whew, it really was ragweed. It was oregano. You know, they'd roll up and they'd say, oh yeah, puff, puff, pass. How many of you would go to a concert in the Lower East Side, the Fillmore East? You'd be paying nickels to $1. You'd see some of the greatest groups that ever performed for nothing. And you cherish that. And many of you have memories of that. Woodstock, 500,000 strong. The Miracle Mets that year. First man to step on the moon. All of these great things along with all the bad things that occurred. The assassinations, the racial riots, and the conflict of the everlasting Vietnam War. We somehow survived that as a nation, didn't we? Yes. Did you raise children and grandchildren during that era? Yes. Who was responsible for teaching them right from wrong? Schools, partly, but it was mostly in the household and the extended household. How many of you happen to be Jewish? How many of you were like with so much surus when Zoran Mandami won the Democratic primary overwhelmingly? A lot of you angry, right? Let me ask you a question though. Did you do a good job telling your children and grandchildren the dangers of a Zoran Mandami historically? How many of you said, I'll tell you what, Seth, I'll tell you what, Phyllis, if you're going to vote for Zoran Mandami, if you're going to go out there and promote this anti-Semite who's doubled down on it, that's it. I ain't paying for your car payments. We're not sending you to school. We're not paying your rent. We're not letting you go off to Acapulco and all these places on vacation. You are going to understand what it's like to be a person who is not a child of privilege and who is the beneficiary of a family that is stable. You know there were a lot of Jewish families who didn't do that. And then, oh my God, they were shocked. What, 40% of our young children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren voted for Zoran Mandami? Yeah. Yeah, they did. So now you got to learn from that. Jews and Gentiles together. So you can go the old way and you can vote. Hey, by the way, you know where Eric Adams is today?
It's in Florida.
It's in Florida, celebrating his birthday. What a piece of work this guy is. This is the start of the real campaign. You know that. The next 2 months, the intensity, everybody's going to be focused. I hope we get more than 23% of the people to actually vote with all the international attention, but you never know. You never know. Where is Andrew Cuomo? Hampton. Why doesn't he run for mayor in Southampton? He'd win overwhelmingly. He spends more time there than here. Where was Zoran Mandami? He was up in the Bronx, not far from Yankee Stadium, getting the endorsement of some Democrat elected officials there, not addressing crime and the drive-by shootings and the gang wars that are consuming that borough again where the blood is flowing. He wants social workers to deal with these issues. Yet, if you've seen Zoran Mandami, he now is accompanied by trained professional police officers undercover who carry weapons, who drive him around in a gas-guzzling big SUV at taxpayers' expense, and he stands there and he smiles and he goes like this. And I'm saying, what a sanctimonious hypocrite, like most politicians. Do as I say and not as I do. The Curtis Sliwa that you know is in the subways every day. The Curtis Sliwa that you know is in the streets as I've always been. The Curtis Sliwa that you know for 35 years on talk radio, WABC, when WABC stood for Always Broadcasting Curtis, morning, afternoon, evening, overnight. know who Curtis Sliwa is. You know all about my life. You know the good, and boy, you know about the bad. Because that's what makes up everybody's life. It's not sanitized. It's not put together to try to cater to the masses. You've learned of me, warts and all. You know who I am. You know where my sentiments lie. I will be the mayor of all the people, but I will never forget my roots. The blue-collar, working-class people who built this city, who made it strong, the immigrant community who came here, didn't have two nickels to rub together, couldn't speak English, couldn't write, and with back-breaking work took the insults and the slings and arrows that were delivered to them. Like my grandfather Fidel, hey, wop, guinea, dago, there's no work for you here today. Come back tomorrow. How do you think he felt? How do you think he felt? He had 13 kids to take care of. The last drop, my mother, Francesca, the only one he had born in America. He said, Wanyan, I had to suck it up, and I had to show back up the next day and shape up for a job that I might not have gotten. Because I had to do it for my family. And if you were to say to him, Pops, would you prefer to go back to Eddie? Are you out of your mind? This is the greatest country in the world. If I had to do it again and again and again and again, I'd do it. As my Polish grandfather Anton and grandmother Wanda said the same thing at their kitchen table, playing the oom-pa-pa music there, and a 4-story wall cup, the house that they owned at 46 and Rockwell near the stockyards in Chicago. This is the heart and soul of America. That's where you came from. The same neighborhoods I grew up in, Canarsie, East New York, Brownsville. You all have stories to tell. It's all important. Now, you want a mayor who talks to billionaires? You got him. I don't have any support of billionaires and millionaires. But you know something? In the last 2 cycles of donations that were made, I raised more money than Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams together, who had all these billionaires. I'll never forget walking into my mother and father's bedroom years before they passed away. And on the wall, I had a picture of Jesus Christ, the Blessed Mother Virgin Mary, Pope John Paul, being the Polish one. They had JFK, and they had Barack Obama. I said, Dad. You're from the land of Lincoln. You taught me all about the greatness of Abraham Lincoln, right? Because he was from Chicago. Oh, yeah, son, I did. Well, here, I got a $5 bill. Can we put a $5 bill on the wall? No Republican goes up on my wall. Not even Abraham Lincoln, who kept the country together. And I know I taught you all that, son. There will never be a Republican on my wall. When Bush 43 unexpectedly won his second term in office against John Kerry, I called to see how my mother was doing in Canarsie. She wasn't feeling well. He said, "Who's this?" I said, "It's your son Curtis." "You're not a son of mine. You helped elect Bush 43. I said, "Dad, I'm a talk radio show host in New York City and voted overwhelmingly for Kerry. Why are you blaming me? You're no son of mine." I couldn't see my mother for the next 2 months. Finally, he eased up. I know what it's like. But as my father, my grandparents, my mother always told me, you're an American first and foremost. You live in the greatest country in the world. You have to go out and you have to earn being an American. You have to add to the legacy, to the history, to the pride, to the freedom that we have here that you don't have in other countries. And in traveling the world and setting up Guardian Angels in 13 countries and 130 cities, I saw that firsthand. So I'm not here to give a political speech. I'm here to tell you, you got a chance to vote for a real New Yorker. Born in Brooklyn Hospital. It was Dr. Duckman who hit me on my dupa, my tuchus, and I haven't been quiet since. They tried to kill me in New York, and I will end up dying in New York. I don't need to go to Florida or anywhere else. I don't need to walk in cemeteries like de Blasio and now his protege, Zoran Mandami, who says, I like to walk in cemeteries because it's a park without people. No, you don't want to get the rash. You don't want people giving you the finger or screaming or yelling at you. I treat New York City like a mosh pit. I dive in. I go into every neighborhood, whether they're friends or foes, and I listen as I was taught to do as a youngster. As my grandfathers would tell me, what do you know? You know nothing. You got to listen. Respect your elders. Understand we have experience. You have nothing. You have bupkis. You have an Italian ugat. So you have a choice. You can either go for the political jargon and be lied to again, like you've been lied to many, many, many times before. I don't have to run through the laundry list. Or you can vote for somebody who happens to be the Republican candidate that nobody challenged this time. Nobody challenged, and they could have. But also I have the first ever independent line. You all love my wife Nancy, right? You all love my wife Nancy, right? She's an animal rescuer like a lot of women and some men are. And she's managed cat colonies for years and years before I met her. And she went out with some of our volunteers and collected signatures to qualify the first ever Protect Animals line. We are the first independent line on the ballot. Not Cuomo, not Adams, not anyone else. And animal abusers are going to go to jail, and we're going to have no-kill shelters. Yes. So, I understand you may be going to the voting booth and you may see the R, and right away, you know, you're like Red Fox. Oh, I can't. Mom and Dad, I can't. I can't. Everybody loves Curtis. It's like the show Everybody Loves Raymond, right? It's hard to say anything bad about him. Everybody loves Curtis, but they say, but he's a Republican. I can't vote for a Republican. Well, now you have the alternative. Do you love animals? Does everyone here love animals? You want to vote to protect the animals and make sure that they're not killed and euthanized. And more importantly, when somebody does abuse animals, they're forced to take responsibility and the consequences by going to jail. Are you in favor of that? I'll tell you, you don't have to vote for me as a Republican. Vote for me on the first independent line that you see, protect animals, and let everybody else out there, Asurus, Ajita, oh, but he's the Republican. Hey, the Republicans want to vote for me as a Republican, fine. And the biggest group, the growing number of voters, is not the Democrats or the Republicans, it's the independents. There are twice as many independents in New York City now as Republicans. Generally, young people, the first time they register to vote, they register as independents. In the polls, guess who's ahead with independents? Take a guess. You just heard how I've spoken, right? Who do you think can galvanize more independents to vote for them? Thank you. Not Cuomo, not Adams, not Zoran Mandami. So I understand the fear that you have of Zoran Mandami. But you got to translate that fear into figuring out who can fight on the ground for the same voters. Remember, leader of the Guardian Angels for 47 years here and internationally. Who do you think most of the members are? Do you think they're my age, taking Bengay baths and drinking Geritol? They're millennials, they're Gen Zers. They're different than our generation, but they're no worse. In many ways, they're better. You have to find out how they're better, and you have to focus on that instead of saying you're lazy, you're stupid, you don't know what you're doing. Because when you say that to them, what are you doing? You're driving them towards AOC, Zoran Mandami, and others who will embrace them. I promise you that if you vote for me, you will not be wasting your vote. I will fight for all of our old values and to give this generation and a future generation the same opportunities that our parents and grandparents and this great city and this great state and this great nation gave to us when we were growing up. When 80% of you voted in 65 and 69, 80% knew you had to vote. Only 23% the last time. That says everything. We're going to change that, and we're going to start with a new generation of children. We're going to give them the same opportunities we all had, whether they're from a dysfunctional household or a household that is structured and straight and keeps them on the right path. That is our mission. And when you die, I don't care what wealth, what equity you have ever acquired, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, you'll leave it for all your children and grandchildren and relatives, and they'll fight over it, and it'll be in probate court or surrogate court forever, and the lawyers will make the money. I just want everyone to know, when my day comes and I take a dirt bath, as my enemies have said and my supporters have said, one thing about Curtis Sliwa: you can't bribe him, you can't buy him, you can't lease him, you can't rent him. He's one of us. He was born this way. He'll die this way. That much you have as a guarantee when you make me the next mayor of the city of New York. So we'll take questions. Feel free, whatever's on your mind, ask any questions.
Anybody who wants to ask questions? Anybody who wants to ask questions, please come out and get online like we do at the board meetings. Anybody? I know, we got one. Just waiting for everybody to come.